This is like about the third time that I've tried to make this video. And I'm a lot more overtired now than I was before, so maybe it'll come out better, maybe it'll come out worse, I don't know. Some of you will know because you've seen it on my channel. I did a bit of an angry rant because of the riots. And yeah, I think doing an angry rant was quite appropriate, because there was no, singular political cause behind these riots. If everyone in the riot was united against one particular cause and they went out to get their views heard by one particular group of people, then one would guess that there would be something beneficial in it. But, the fact of the matter is, that's not what happened. In the end, it was just people just choosing to be unpleasant and undesirable to one another. Businesses have suffered, the businesses which are parts of the local community and part of the local infrastructure, businesses which are part of a supply chain for other businesses that the rioters might even end up working for at some point in the future, because we're all heavily interconnected via the economy and via society and by community. It was a massive, irrational, illogical act, but I did think what could actually be done to prevent riots in the future. It is said sometimes by some people that these things don't happen in isolation. There's all kinds of causes, including family breakdown, including unemployment, the economy. Well, let's just try and have a look at this. When a young person leaves school or university, they'll find it hard to get a job because they've got no work experience. And even once they've got some work experience, the work experience that they'll get will hold them to a certain role, because essentially employers will assume that the individuals would or should follow a certain career path. For instance, someone starts as accounts administrator, they will go through the next, the process after that. But if you've been in university and you are actually educated, the assumption is you spend 3 years out of the world of work. So essentially, what good can you be? So just as I was, I entered into the world of work, working for people or working underneath people who were younger than me and being paid more money than me, which was, of course, really rather weird. And of course, they had no qualifications. So that was rather interesting. Getting stability if you're a young person, just say in your 20s, can be very hard as well. And on top of that, there is age prejudice, which means that those who are adults and therefore capable, regarded as being capable of making intelligent decisions, are not regarded as being adults or grown-ups by the older generation who've already got the careers and who've already got everything else. Then, of course, you got the problem with housing and the fact that houses themselves are very expensive. And of course, you need to have a good quantity of stability behind you to be able to get there. And young people don't have the ability to be able to get themselves to a certain level of stability whereby they could actually achieve something to the order of being able to get a house at some point in the future. The market is very different to the way it was 50 years ago, for instance. Also, there's problems with the recruitment industry and the way that operates, and also the way that business culture works within companies. The recruitment industry, which I confess, unfortunately worked in two different ways. Number one, self-employed, and number two, working for another organization, is just sales. It's just people selling a product, and the product is, of course, the person, the candidate, to the client, which is the hiring company. That's all it is. And there's just the same quantity of skullduggery and inappropriate behavior which goes into selling people, as in selling double glazing. And I know this from experience. When I try to go self-employed doing recruitment, I try to change that and to do it more ethically, which I found very difficult to do, taking into account the fact of the business mind of the client companies, as well as the aggressive tactics of some of the candidates. So I can understand that there are lots of little sub-problems which help to create a bigger problem in the job market itself, thus slowing down the progress of the individual. Now, as far as within companies themselves, I mean, if I was to look back over my job searching experiences in my 20s, there was times when I applied for jobs through all the, regular means, and despite the fact it was advertised quite well in the newspaper, the job was then pulled because, the company themselves had made a mistake and they suddenly realized they didn't actually have any money to hire someone with. So essentially the companies make a lot of mistakes, including in terms of the forms of jobs which you're interviewed for. I mean, I was second interview stage for the full-time permanent job, which I was told about during the first interview, because that's what I was going for, a full-time, respectable, responsible job in the financial department of part of the largest insurance organization in the country. And then in the second interview they turned around and says, well, actually we don't have that opportunity, we've got a temporary thing in place instead. And during the second interview they actually had what essentially amounts to the heavy mob, namely a rather well physically developed senior individual, just in case I kicked off, because the company had made a big mistake. So essentially, corporate culture has to change, job searching culture has to change, business ethics will have to change, the way that companies actually operate, and indeed all of the human dynamics within companies would also have to change. All of it. And basically, to prevent riots, you've got to reform the mentality of the whole of humankind. Then, of course, there's the benefit system. Because, if you're on the benefit system, which I was for a time, your housing benefit doesn't cover all of your rent. And in fact, in some cases, it may only cover 1/4, so you may have tens or hundreds of pounds extra to try and find each month when you're essentially not allowed to work more than up to 16 hours a week in a part-time role if you're on benefits, which is, of course, impossible. Then, of course, there's the period of time it takes to apply for benefits. You can apply the moment you lose your job, and it can take 6 weeks or 8 weeks for you to receive as much as £50. Alright, so there's a big problem of instability when a person loses their job. It's very hard for a lot of young people. And then, of course, there's the backstabbing when you're actually in work itself, which means that your job stability is actually being dramatically affected on a daily basis by the internal politics, the lies, the self-promotion, and desire to kick people on who are lower down the scale in unpleasant and unfortunate ways, some of which, in the case of some of my colleagues in a certain company, actually resulted in massive nervous breakdowns, and there was actually one suicide which was unfortunately successful. So can we, D. Landon Cole did this video to say that, we've got to understand what the problems are so we can create change to make it unlikely these things are ever going to happen again. The question I would ask would be, is that actually possible considering the harsh realities of the world today? And also taking into account that all of these little issues, the inefficiencies with companies, the inefficiencies with the recruitment process, the inefficiencies in the benefit system, all these things are made even worse by other issues such as police brutality when it happens, which is a lot less these days than has been in previous eras. As well as the lack of understanding that humans have when they're dealing with large-scale and indeed small-scale problems, because humans' cognitive ability has to become developed, not just so that they can think, but so they can think about the dynamics of what's happening in a particular situation. and all the factors which are affecting things on the ground level, so to speak, are also being doubly affected by global economic forces, which is being impacted upon by local political issues in other countries. How on earth, considering these complexities, could we ever, and I mean ever, stop riots? Now, this is what could be colloquially called serious, complex shit. Okay? And it's on many different levels, and the dynamics here cannot be solved by just amending, let's say, just the benefit system, or just the recruitment sector, although fixing both would help an awful lot. Having strong codes of conduct which have to be put into place for the recruitment sector. Having all calls to each and every single recruitment consultant, whether they're self-employed or whether they're working for a large organization, recorded. Okay? So there can actually be a paper, a proper paper trail, and also all the emails being sent would have to be recorded as well. So when push comes to shove, we'll be able to tell whether jobs have been represented properly and honestly, for a start off, and people are not just being traded as if they're slaves. And also, how on earth would you be able to control the business sector and make sure that people will be able to get the right quality of work experience to be able to help them in a good quality long-term career that would give them hope, and, well, not just hope, of course, but hope that they could actually become a homeowner and settle down and have a husband and or wife, dog, children, and all the rest of those things, and to be able to comfortably afford them and to be able to pay for their social life when the children grow up, as well as any extra medical care that is required, as well as education, and so on and so forth. Because those things are what people are concerned about. Then you've got the other issues of property and what property means to people. I did a text blog post on another forum saying that, when the Homo sapien, our species, started to take over from Neanderthals, one of the many reasons that we did, because we used our minds differently, and we used jewelry and clothing as a means of communicating who we are and what we're about. Okay, now we have that these days as well, but it's even more complex because the jewelry and the clothing involves smartphones, good quality digital cameras. It involves iPod Nanos. It involves everything, okay, including the fashion as well, and the way that fashion trends has been affected by media, from, I don't know, soap operas through to commercials. The things that one needs for social survival these days is much more than they were 200 years ago, or 300 years ago, when basically you could survive by just like making broom handles or pitchfork handles outside of your, wattle and daub mud hut somewhere. We have to have things which mean something about our position as a normal person. Okay, I mean, for someone like myself, I don't care. I've got the things that I need to do my job. But as you see, I'm usually wearing Nike gear. Why? Well, Nike gear is cheap. Alright? And I'm poor. So essentially I'm wearing a badge to basically say I am poor, basically. But I don't, I don't care that that is the case. But the vast majority of people do care. Alright? Because within society it has become necessary to have things of value. And then of course you've got the rich-poor divide, which is another massive problem that we've got in society. And to reach the rich level, or indeed even the middle ground level, is something which for the vast majority is actually unobtainable. And it's getting even harder for younger people to have any feeling that they're going to get anywhere near that. This will create frustration, anger, resentment, bitterness, and in any individual could spark over to something rather inappropriate. I mean, when I was going through that time in my 20s when travel to work cost £45 because I was living in London and using the trains. Rent was £60 a week. Sorry, that £45 was not for the month, okay? That was for the week. When I had to pay the council tax, the water, the electric, the gas, and on top of that, my lunches at work, all these things, okay? And I was taking home £160 a week. It was damn near impossible, basically. I mean, if you think about the incoming and the outgoing, I mean, I didn't do much in the way of cooking. I just, had rice in the evening. Even a 10, 12 grand a year job didn't actually pay in practice much more than being on benefits. In which case I would probably have survived a lot better. Just having the benefits and having 16 hours worth of part-time work, which I would have probably been allowed to do and would still have been able to keep my marbles. Just about. The survival level and maintaining it is difficult. On top of that, we got individuals suffering from another stress, and that is motivation. Now, during the Open University course, which I did into the brain, which was probably one of the most fascinating things I've ever studied in my entire life, we learned an awful lot about how the individual has developed, how we as a species, I should have said, have developed the motivation response. Because we have only got a certain quantity of energy left. We got a little reserve tank for that moment when we are being chased by a tiger or something like that, so that we can escape. It's an evolutionary trait. But there are motivational salespeople. There are motivational sales jobs. There is the perpetual motivation that we get from the media to try and do better, to try and make more money, and all the rest of that. But that uses up this reserve tank of energy that we've got. When you carry on depleting that, you end up depleting both the body and the brain. The brain of the human individual starts to get a bit unbalanced because you're using that reserve tank of energy all that much, and actually mental diseases can start to emerge, which will make matters worse for the human being and make the individual much more likely to act upon the resentfulness, bitterness, anger, violence, and all the rest of that. And that's if they don't go into out-and-out depression. So, yes, I would say that 21st society life is pretty much a perfect storm for anger. But during all the times when I was struggling, the idea of revolts was not something I wanted to do physically. It was something that I fantasized about. Yes, because I was going through hell. I started getting into debt and building up a bit of a drink problem, and so on and so forth. And I used to listen to this track by a band called Skyclad, and the chorus of one of their tracks went, "Take your partners for our civil war dance, open season on the underworked and overpaid, erase the Constitution, a bloody revolution, the simplest solution to the problems that they have made," which was quite cutting. And I think that, I used to listen to that with my headphones on, volume right up, just anything to help me deal with the anger. And yeah, I fantasized about revolt and rebellion of a violent nature, but of course I never wanted to actually do it. Okay, I did soft grind to help myself survive. I stole some shoe polish once because I had a job interview, and I couldn't afford to pay out like £1.50 for the tin of shoe polish. I didn't physically have £1.50. Okay, it was too much money for me. I literally physically did not have £1.50 on me. And so I stole this tin of shoe polish so I could polish up my my cheap market black shoes that would only last a very short period of time. And I went back to the store where I stole this from a little while later when I finally had £1.50. I told them what I'd done, I apologized, and I paid them for it. And the guy who ran the store thanked me for my honesty. I would still say that those who did this rioting were completely wrong. It wasn't, a singular political cause. It wasn't anything apart from just unpleasant, thuggish, undesirable, scum behavior, and it was wrong. And yeah, I do feel sorry for them. Because of what I went through, I can empathize with their anger. But I certainly can't empathize with any of their behavior.